Today, I have with me Ral West. She has over 40 years of entrepreneurial experience and quite a journey to share. A really cool, amazing story that I think you're going to really enjoy. She has a massive passion for business, comes from an entrepreneurial family, as do I. And her current business, I absolutely love the name. It's Ral West, Living the Dream. Ral teaches entrepreneurs how to overcome overwhelm and accomplish more success with less stress so they can have a smooth running business and live the life they deserve, which is all of those things are things that you know I am passionate about. And today we're going to spend most of our time really hearing about Ral's journey. And my intention is that something comes out of this for you that is inspiring, thought provoking, some pearl of wisdom or something that's an aha moment for you. So let's dive in. Ral, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks, Charis. It's a pleasure.
So I first need to ask because I can imagine my audience may be curious, and I don't know the answer to this. So, is there a story behind your first name, Ral? Ral. It's unique. I've never heard it before. Is it short for something? Where did it come from?
It's not short for anything, it's the whole name, and it came from my parents' imagination. There's kind of a long story behind it. I'll try to reduce it. I was conceived on a round the world trip. So my
Oh.
initials needed to be RTW, which stand for around the world in the travel business. And they wanted something unique. My brother was Richard, so they couldn't use that name. And the Ral actually came from a comic strip character named Prince Valiant, but Valiant didn't start with an R, so they changed the Val to Ral.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad I asked you. That is such a fun story. So, interestingly enough, apparently I was conceived on a New Year's Eve night when they were supposed to be going to some parties. So, that is the first time I've ever shared that part of my story. Um, and oh, that is fun. Okay, really fun. So, let's start with I know your dad had a business, but you chose not to go into it. Let's start there, or tell us a little bit about your childhood or whatever you think is important for us to get a little backstory.
My father was involved in Alaska tourism, and as a matter of fact, was is known as the founder of Alaska tourism. They call him Mr. Alaska. So when I was growing up, we had small cruise ships, hotels, motor coaches, keeping passengers moving all over Alaska. So Alaska was like a second home to me, but my childhood home is in Seattle, Washington. And I did work for the family company for a number of years. But then when I hit my mid 20s, it was time to move on. I needed to get out from underneath dad's wing. And I moved to Ketchikan, Alaska to take a job as a director of marketing for a small tour company there. And then about a year later, I moved to Anchorage to open my own business. And that was a small marketing consulting firm. And that's where I met my husband. And because of his picking my brain, he decided to start a new company helping Alaskans find their way to Hawaii and booking condos for them. And that company grew. We, of course, got married, and I ended up working with him in that business. We operated it for 25 years and eventually sold it to Alaska Airlines.
Wow, quite an accomplishment. I can't wait to hear a little more details about some of that experience. So, a couple things rolling through my mind. So, first of all, interesting fact that we are both Washingtonians. So I was born and raised in Tri Cities, specifically in Richland, Washington State, other side of the mountains than you. And I met my husband at UPS, University of Puget Sound, in
Ah,
Tacoma, very close to Seattle. So many visits to Seattle very much Northwest childhood experience. So interesting that we have that in common. I think you're the first guest I've had on that is from Washington State. So that's a
wow.
fun, out of all 50 states, that's a fun factoid. So,
Yes. And
yeah,
and my daughter is a graduate of UPS.
really? Oh, that's
Yes.
fantastic. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah. Okay. So we are alums. How fun. Okay. So then Let's hear some more about this experience of growing well, first of all, your childhood. Did you go on these boats and these experiences a lot growing up as a kid? Was that part of your
Absolutely.
childhood?
Yes. I like to say that my middle name is Travel, even though it's really Teresa. But
Well,
I just,
tea.
yeah,
Love it.
I have I have travel in my blood, and I absolutely am passionate about it. So yes, I was traveling to Alaska just about every year, starting when I was about 4, and so I was on the little cruise ships and on the buses and all over. And I actually traveled the world quite a bit too. And I went to Europe for the first time when I was 13, and shortly after that went to Japan and so on. So definitely, I'm a travel bug.
Wow. Yeah, that's a pretty remarkable aspect of a childhood. I think I was about 15 when my parents we went to Europe. And yeah, amazing time to be able to do that. Like we're old enough to really have those memories, and be able to enjoy the experience, I think, in a different way. So that just reminds me of that experience I had with my parents, which I'm really grateful for because that was a few years before our accident. So, so grateful they took the time to do something like that. But okay, let's look next at this experience of growing the business with your husband that then you ended up selling to Alaska Airlines. I mean, that's quite an accomplishment and not a common thing you hear on someone's in someone's bio. I mean, so uh, tell us about any of the highs, the lows of some of that, because I know for myself, with entrepreneurial experience that goes back 3 decades when I count my involvement in my family's business too. And then my audience, a lot of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial minded people, that the there's some challenges, there's some rough days, there's it comes with the whole gamut of emotions. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that experience and any poignant details that you can share that really shaped you.
Oh, there are many, Charis. I can remember the early days, even actually before I started working with my husband in my own little business. We had a baby girl, and I brought her to the office. And I was so busy multitasking that I would be breastfeeding her at my desk while meeting with my staff and on the phone with clients and so forth. So I was your typical overwhelmed entrepreneur that just had too much going on, trying to juggle personal life, family, business, helping my husband then with his business. And then gradually we decided that, yeah, I probably need to go all in with him. He needed some more marketing help. And we thought that's silly to pay someone else when, I'm a marketing person. So we started working together. Amazingly, we did not kill each other, although there were times when that was a thought. Um,
Yeah, I have history of
oh,
working with. I watch my parents work together, and then I have history of working with my husband in various ways over the years. And yes, there can be challenging moments.
yes, but overall, I think we developed an interesting synergy where our strengths balanced each other out. We complemented each other. So we had some very, very good times, and then there were some times that the market changed totally. One year in particular, the airline that we had been using to take passengers between Alaska and Hawaii just stopped serving Alaska. And we sat there for a while with nothing to sell. And there was a day that we had lunch together and we were using our credit card to make payroll, taking cash advances to make payroll. And the discussion was, do we just close the doors? I mean, what are we doing here? And then we decided that, Alaskans really need a way to get to Hawaii. The winters are long and dark and cold, and this is almost like a public service. We need to find a way to do this. And it wasn't too long before my husband located a way to charter a jet. and everybody thought we were crazy. I mean, that's a huge undertaking. We had to guarantee the entire plane, whether we sold a seat or not. And I remember him signing the contract and saying, this is a huge amount of money. We don't have this much money. And I said, well, don't worry about it because they can't take it from us if we don't have it. So,
There's that
so
entrepreneurial spirit.
yes, it's a lesson in risk taking.
Yes.
And of course, I had done my homework. I had run my Excel spreadsheets and figured out how many passengers we had actually carried in previous summers, because this was a summertime charter from Alaska to Hawaii. And people thought, well, nobody's going to go to Hawaii in the summertime. But I knew the numbers from previous years. I said, no, we can do this. And my husband got his mother's retirement account. She was a school teacher, and he put her retirement account up as collateral for the guarantee on this charter. So he
Ooh.
was highly motivated to sell every seat on those planes that summer. And he did, and it was immensely successful. So then we went on to charter other planes, bigger planes. We were mostly chartering wide body jets like 767s, and the company grew. And of course, in those days, it was a mom and pop organization, and
And
we were
let's put it
doing
in
everything.
perspective. What decade was this? Let's have the
This was the 80s, late
Okay.
80s and
Okay.
early 90s, early
Okay.
90s by
So
the time when we
okay.
started chartering jets. It was 90, 91. And our daughter was then about 5 or 6 years old. And, we were still busy parents and we were doing everything in the business. So time was a huge, luxury. Because we just didn't have much of it to go around. And that's when I started figuring out how to create systems to make things go more smoothly. And we had a wonderful mentor. We had been studying with Robert Kiyosaki, who is
Mm-hmm.
of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad fame. But when we studied with him, he hadn't written the book yet. And I remember having lunch with him on the island of Hawaii, the Big Island. And it was just the three of us, John and Robert Kiyosaki and myself. And he said, you've got to get this book. And the book is named The E Myth by Michael
Mm.
Gerber. So we were flying to Honolulu that day and we stopped by a bookstore on our way to the hotel and picked up the book and started reading it. And it was like, oh my God, this is what we need. This is exactly what we need to do in our business. And it was all about creating the systems so that your business could run without the mom and pop. And we worked on it feverishly. I went back to college about that time to get a degree in organizational management. And every time I went to school, I would come back to the office the next morning and say, guess what we're going to do now? And the staff would just kind of roll their eyes. And it's like, oh my God, what did she learn this time? And we just, actively implemented the advice that we got. And it was interesting because a lot of other people, I would direct them to read this book, and they would, and they'd say, "Oh, that's a great book." But I'd say, "Well, did you do any of it?" "Oh, no, but it was a great book." And the main difference was that we actually implemented what we were learning,
That's
and it made,
common. I find that really is
yeah,
common. A lot of people who read or listen to podcasts or things and, the ahas don't turn into actual change. It's a
yeah.
step. It's a step, and it's great to have some knowledge. And it might be, laying the groundwork for their future path when they are ready to make some of those changes. But it is probably too common. Before you go on, I need to ask you one question, in case anybody else is curious too, who's listening. So, your dad was a successful business person, and yet you did mention in the middle here of some challenges with you know using the credit cards and your husband's mother's retirement account, using that for collateral. So i'm I'm putting two and two together and making the assumption, but I'd love for you to confirm it for us, that you didn't have family money coming to you to then grow your business, that this was more something that you and your husband did essentially from scratch on your own. Is that accurate?
More or less. My
Okay.
parents have always been very generous, and my father and I got along very well after I left his employ. But at that particular time, he was growing his business, and his capital was basically spoken for. He was
Okay.
buying cruise ships and so forth, and just couldn't spare the help for us. And he was very supportive, but just couldn't help us out monetarily at that particular time.
Okay.
So
Great.
we did have to kind of scratch. And I remember that summer that we didn't have any airline service, we decided, okay, we can't buy soda anymore, so we're going to drink Kool-Aid. And we can't afford to go to movies, so we'll just watch TV. And our vacation was taking a camper on a road trip. You know, so we were scrounging and scraping by, but it was a wonderful experience to have to go through that.
Yeah. Okay. That really helps us to really understand. Okay. So carry on with the journey then.
Okay, well, we developed these systems and we got to the point where, okay, I think we're ready. We got an outside board of directors, businessmen that we admired in the Alaska business industry, and we created an A list, and all three of the A list people said, yes, we'd love to help you. And then we went on to hire a chief operating officer and a chief financial officer, and we handed the business over to them. It's like, having your baby walk out the door on their own. And their biggest concern was, are you sure you're going to be able to let us run the company? And I said, oh, yeah. My husband, it was a little bit harder for him. But essentially, we did let these two gentlemen who did not know each other before we hired them, but who became the best of friends, still work together, as a matter of fact. And they were able to take what we had created and take the foundation that we had laid very carefully, and they grew the business. And it was amazing to see. I
I
was
want to
also a little
interject.
bit,
Oh, you were
yeah,
also a little bit. Go ahead.
a little bit chagrined that they were able to do so much more with it because I thought,
Oh.
well, I thought we did a great job, but.
Okay. So I the I want to poke in just a little bit on the transition there. So you said that was easier for you than your husband to be able to let go of the control. Was that a gradual over time of you training them? Was that how long was that process? Because I know that I have quite a few clients and listeners who have gone through transitions like that or about to or in different ways. And like you just expressed between the difference between you and your husband, for a fair amount of people that it's more like what you alluded to with your husband of it being more uncomfortable, more challenging to make that change, to let go, to trust, to not be the go-to person, to let go of the reins. A lot of identity can get wrapped up and connected with the baby that has been birthed and grown, and it can be really hard to disconnect. So talk to that for just a little bit before we go back to before we continue on with the journey.
Yes, I think that for me, I was the one that was most actively involved in establishing the systems and
Mhm.
inculcating the team with our culture. I was very adamant about making sure that our culture was widely known amongst our team and actively used to support every decision. We had a work ethic that my husband actually created. It was called WERQ, which was win-win, efficiency, responsibility, and quality. And I felt very comfortable that our culture was deeply embedded with the team. And the two guys that we brought on board, we set them up with all of the tools, with all of the systems and the culture. And we did train them. It took, a good 6 months to a year before we, really let them fly on their own. And we had regular meetings with them, and part of the system that we had established was creating metrics. So we knew how the company was doing no matter where we were. We could be traveling around the world and we could still get the reports, and we would know exactly how the bookings were going and what the financials were. And, we could keep our tabs on what was going on, even though we were not present in the office. Also, at that time in my life, I was very active in some nonprofits on a board, chairing a board for a private school, etc. So I had lots of other activities. My
Okay.
husband didn't have quite so much other things going on in his life, so that's why it was a little bit harder for him. But we had quarterly meetings with our board of directors, and sometimes they were in places like, Napa, Carmel, fun places, and we would entertain them, and they loved that. And we would get great advice. And our COO and CFO had to make reports to the board, as did the directors of our various departments, director of operations, director of marketing, and so forth. So everybody had a really good feel for how the company was doing.
Okay. Okay. Great. And I think that does make a difference that since you had other things going on, you had at some point picked up those other roles and other projects and responsibilities that that helped you to have these other pieces of your identity puzzle and feeling needed and fulfilled and all of those things to
Right.
be able to not have this one huge piece of the puzzle that got removed, but it was a smaller piece for you compared to your husband. And I think that makes a big difference. Whenever anybody can do that kind of transitioning from one thing to another, so that it's not just get to the edge of almost what can feel like a sudden cliff appearing versus just a slight change in the path, that
Yeah.
in that kind of experience, how it can feel at least. So I think that's an important thing to note and how that actually showed up differently for you and your husband. Okay, so back to the journey.
Yes.
So you've got these two gentlemen growing this sucker in ways that even shocked you. And then what happened next?
Well, we knew that Alaska Airlines was poking around and looking at entering the market to fly to Hawaii. And we also kind of figured that their pockets were deeper than ours. So we decided that this would be a good time to pivot and sell the company. And we were looking at a couple of different buyers, but the most logical buyer was Alaska Airlines. And we hired an investment banker, and it took a while, but we convinced Alaska Airlines that it would be cheaper for them to buy our business than to win the market, because we owned that market from
Mm,
Alaska to Hawaii. And our passengers and clients, customers were very loyal to us. And Alaska Airlines knew that too. And they knew that it would cost them a lot of money, because we would go out, if we had to fight with them, we would go out kicking. So it would be a fair war, and we would all lose money. So they figured that it would be cheaper just to buy us and have us step aside and let them have the entire market. And when we did that and made the announcement, a lot of our customers were very unhappy with us, because they couldn't believe that we had betrayed them by selling out to Alaska Airlines. But it was the smartest thing for us to do.
and what year was
And 2008,
Okay.
and Alaska Airlines had not made a significant purchase for about, I think it was about 25 years since they had purchased Horizon Air. So this was a
Wow.
big deal for them too.
Wow. And what was the
And
name of your business that they acquired?
Hawaiian Vacations.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So they took over. Were you immediately out? How did that next transition go?
It took a few months for us to transition. They actually needed us to keep operating our flights for a while, because they couldn't ramp up quite as quickly. So it was a few months of transition. We gradually let staff go. That was heartbreaking though,
Mm.
because the staff is like family to us. And in fact, we call ourselves the Ohana, which in Hawaiian means family. And that was the most heartbreaking part of it. And one of the things that we did prior to actually selling was we tried to find another product that we could market so that we could hold on to our staff. And we had an infrastructure there, we had an office, we had a computerized reservation system. There had to be some way that we could utilize all of that infrastructure with some other product. And so my husband found a couple of small cruise ships that were tied up at a dock in Seattle. They were owned by a bank because their prior owners had gone into bankruptcy. And so he made an offer to purchase them. And we thought, okay, well, we'll just start a small cruise line. It was something that was in my blood. I knew a little bit about small cruise ships in Alaska. And so we got the offer accepted and we did the due diligence. However, we found that after a few years of just sitting at the dock in Lake Union in Seattle, that these little boats did not have the seaworthy steel hulls that were needed.
Mm,
And so there was a lot more work that needed to be done to make them seaworthy. So we went back to the bank and said we need X amount reduced from the price to allow us to cover this additional steel that had to be added. And the bank said no. So we
mm,
said, okay, well, never mind. You can enjoy paying for the mortgage and the insurance and the, security and utilities and all that, and we'll walk
mm,
away. So we walked away and ended up just shutting the business down, um, letting all of our people go with, of course, some generous packages for them.
okay,
And,
good.
um, and then we owned the office space, so we found a tenant and leased the office space to them. And then the next part of the story is that a year or so later, the bank that had owned those small ships had been taken over by the FDIC, and all of their assets had been handed over to another bank. And that bank was trying to get rid of these little ships that were still sitting at the same dock rotting. And they went to my husband and said, "Would you like those ships now?" And he said, "Well, no, the time has passed. We don't want them anymore." And this vice president of this bank said, "Well, I have a turd in my pocket and it's starting to smell." These
Okay.
Yeah, these ships are going on the auction block on Friday. The lowest bidder is going to get them. Well, we were like, oh, that. So anyway, he went to the auction, bid some ridiculously low price, and we won. And we got these two little ships. And then we're like, oh my God, well, it's middle of summer of 2009. Um, it's too late to put them into service in 2010 because the marketing and all that preparation for an Alaska tour season happens about 18 months prior. And I said, don't worry about it. We didn't spend that much for them. We can afford to just let them sit and we'll put them into service in 2011. So that's how we came into the pivot from operating, a charter airline to being the owner of some small cruise ships. Well, we had a friend who was operating a small cruise line, and we went to him and said, do you want to operate these little ships for us? And he said, yes. So that's what we did. We just basically did a bareboat charter and let them do all of the operating and all of the marketing. And we just, collected the lease payments. But of course, we had to spend a ton of money to get the ships ready for service because they had just been falling apart sitting at the dock, so they needed the steel work as well as all the interior, basically gutting and putting all new soft goods and everything in to make them pretty and ready for the passengers. So that
Wow.
was the next chapter, and there's more, but I don't know, you might
Well,
want me to stop.
I think it's fascinating. So let's are you still involved with that business or with those ships at all, or has that all transitioned since then?
It has transitioned. We started selling them to the company that was chartering them from us. But in the meantime, in the end of the 2010 cruise season, my brother, who was operating our family business, had to close the doors of the business. And there were some ships that were um, pledged as security for a bank loan, and the bank came to us and said, would you please take over these ships? And we did. And so then we had three more ships that we put into service with this same cruise line and chartered the ships to them.
Wow.
Again, had to put money into them to fix them up, and they'd been a little bit run down. And so by 2011, we were chartering five little cruise ships in the Alaska market. So we had this going for a number of years, and it was wonderful because we didn't really have any operational responsibility. We were just
Mhm.
collecting the lease payments. And one by one, we were selling the ships to the operator. Well, when COVID hit in 2020, we had one ship left. And in March of 2020, we got a phone call saying the ship is tied up at the dock. We can't operate it. We can't make the lease payments. And we're like, oh, God, now what? Time for another pivot. So we eventually sold that ship back to the operator, not for the greatest price because obviously it had lost value because it wasn't operating. But that was the opportunity for us to look around and see what else was out there in the way of investments and new opportunities. The world was changing because of
Yeah.
COVID,
Well,
obviously.
and speaking of investments and finances, I think this would be a good time to share too. So after the sale to Alaska Airlines, how well did that set up you and your husband? I mean, was that a situation where you did or did not actually need to, work anymore?
No, everyone thought that would be the perfect time for us to retire.
Okay.
Okay, you've got this, chunk of money. You guys can just go sail off into the sunset and enjoy your lives, but that's not us.
So
So
talk about that because this is very uncommon with many people listening, whether or not they're at that stage. And I have some clients that are and have reinvented themselves in various ways over time or are in semi-retirement because they just want to stay in some kind of entrepreneurial game and keep playing with it to some, because it lights them up. I've got some people that many that are similar in your situation that technically on paper don't need to work, and yet
mhm.
they are. I mean, they are, and you have a current business. So why did you and your husband not, what does that mean that that wouldn't work for you, or however you said it? Like, why would that not be a fit for you? Why did you want to keep finding things to do, and why are you still working and doing something now, even in a new iteration of you now that we'll get to in a minute?
Excellent question. It's one that our friends ask me all the time. But the answer is that you said it. Business is a game. I love it. It's a passion and it's fun. And I get lit up when I start getting into conversations, cocktail parties or wherever, people talking about business. It excites me. So it's something that I can't imagine. I can't imagine retiring. To me, retire is a four-letter word, and also I refuse to age. I want to be youthing rather than aging.
Oh,
So
I love that. I love that.
so I try to keep myself as vibrant and active as possible. I work out at the gym. I do yoga when we're at our home in Maui. I take long walks. I mean, I just try to stay um, alive and vibrant and strong and healthy. And I want to be around for many more decades. And some people say, "Oh, I don't want to live that long. I don't want to live into my hundreds." I'm like, "Why not? Geez, I can't imagine giving up." But I want to make sure that if I live into my hundreds, which I intend to do, that I'm going to be able to do so healthily and not be in a wheelchair and not have too many impairments to deal with. So I got to work at it. So
Wow.
that's what I do. And when we sold the last cruise ship, our next pivot was into real estate. Well, we'd been investing in real estate for about 30, 35 years, but this time we got into multifamily syndications. And so now we're investing in apartment complexes all over the southern parts of the United States: Arizona,
Mm,
Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Florida. We own or are part owners in over 6,000 units of
mm.
apartment units across the lower part of the US. So that's just another thing. We actually have about three or four businesses that we still keep active with, mostly involving real estate. But the newest business, this Ral West Live in the Dream, came about because about a year ago, I was getting ready to um, do more promotion of our syndications for real estate. And our youngest daughter, who was working with us, said, "Well, Mom, this is not a great time really to be promoting multifamily. The interest rate increases and so forth. Why don't you instead get out there and talk about this dream life that you and dad have created? Because everybody that you meet says, "Oh my God, you guys are living the dream. I want to do that. Will you adopt me?" And and so my daughter said, "Just teach people how you did it, and they so that they can do it too." And I thought about it for a while because I thought, "Oh God, I don't need another business." But that is a passion of mine. I mean, I really strongly believe that people need to, one, follow their passions, and two, they need to have the life that they deserve. Nothing bugs me more than seeing somebody working and toiling at a job that they hate
Hmm.
because they're trying to, wait for retirement, wait for their tenure, whatever the deal is. I mean, oh, that's a crime. I hate it. So if I can help people figure out how to create the life that they want and manage their business so that the business isn't managing them, and get out from underneath the overwhelm, the constant feeling of being exhausted and having too many balls in the air. I've done that. I know how to get out of that. And if I can help people, that would be wonderful. So that's why I did it. And now I'm having to learn so many things because all the technology is totally different from when I first started my marketing consulting business like 40 years ago. So, yeah, there's a lot to learn. And that's another one of my passions is I'm addicted to learning, and
Yeah.
it's okay. I'm an addict. I admit it. I'm not seeking recovery though.
I love that. Me learning about the online aspect of business these days in the recent few years here, and updating myself in that information, knowledge, and skill set, and well, and that got it just keeps evolving and changing with AI and all the things that are continuing to change so much in the last year. But I was reminded of that about myself too, how much I love being a student and a student of life, and like in personal development through therapy, through coaching, me as a client of coaches along my journey as well, but also learning these kinds of things. And uh, I find it so much fun. Like you, it's so much fun. I so yeah, yeah, I can really relate to that.
Yeah. No,
Wonderful.
I'm a perpetual student. I'm doing Tony Robbins programs. Last November, I walked on fire at his Unleashing the Power Within, and that amazed a lot of people. It's like, you actually walked on hot coals? I said, yes, I did, and it was fabulous. And now I'm going off to some of his other events, and I do masterminds and read books and just I just eat it up.
Yeah.
It's
Have you always been into personal development, or has when did that come into your life?
I I think it started back in the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, and I remember doing things like Louise Hay
Mhm.
and loving relationships training, and started studying with Robert Kiyosaki, as I said, back in
That's
like
right. Yes. Yes.
1987. He came to Anchorage with some programs, and we did like every one of his programs. And I studied with him for almost 10 years. And that was really before he became, so famous with the Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But he helped us so much, not only with personal development, but with actual tangible business advice
Mhm.
too. And so, yeah, I've been kind of a junkie for personal development, and I love Ed Milet and Jamie Kern Lima and all of these people that are out there trying to help people and change the world. I think it's fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really a fun place to be. I'm loving my piece of that uh experience myself. So, both as the learner, seeker, and also as the teacher and guide. So it's
Yes.
really, really, really fun. So you, in your own way, are connected in with that, although it's more in the systems of businesses. So tell us a little bit then about specifically what do you actually do with clients? Are you working one on one with clients? I think you have an upcoming program. Tell us a little bit about what you're actually doing with clients, so that we can understand what that looks like. Is it coaching and then they're going and doing the work? Is it consulting where you're doing stuff for them? Is it a combination? Like, give us a little more insight into what your business life is like these days.
Well, I've been coaching people in their businesses for a number of years, but I didn't do it as a business, so I didn't get paid for it. So I have just a small amount of one-on-one clients, but mostly I'm working on developing this online course, which will make it a lot more affordable for broader number of people to get the information. So hopefully by the end of the summer, that course will be launched. And it's a course that will go through what I have found over my 40 years of being in business are the most fundamental aspects that a business owner needs to pay attention to. I call them my 6 essential secrets to business success. And I have a free PDF that lists those if your audience wants to get that. We can
Yeah,
It's available.
absolutely. We'll put
Yeah,
that in the link in the show notes, so people can go snag that and join your email list too to stay connected with you and hear when you
yeah.
launch that program. And I know some you've got some time coming, so don't hold her to the current name of the program and details. But what is it currently titled? What is your plan for what it's going to encompass?
It's called Overcome Overwhelm, Create a Smooth Running Business with Less Stress.
Okay.
And it's just essentially how to create systems, how to use your team, how to create your corporate culture, how to measure the data, how to apply your systems to customer service to make sure that you're delivering the product that your customers want. So it's all encompassing how to operate your business. But the foundation of it is systems, and you can apply systems to every aspect of a business. I actually apply systems to every aspect of my life too.
What's one bizarre way that, or something that some people might think is a little bit bizarre that in your life where you apply a system? Are you willing to reveal?
Yes, I use a spreadsheet for just about everything. I have a Christmas spreadsheet that allows me to keep track of all the projects, all the gifts, and I keep a track of what I've given to everybody over the years so that I don't repeat the same gift.
That's
And,
smart.
and every year about September, I bring out the spreadsheet and, update it for the following year. And then I just sail through Christmas without a whole lot of stress.
That's fabulous. I love that. I used to have a spreadsheet for like packing and trips, and then I stopped using anything for a while. But that lately, I put the key things back on an app, a list app, and I have a trip list, and I have a different version for if my taking my dog or not, and it just I. I
Yes.
talk about less stress. I mean, talking about less stress, like that is these lists and sheets are perfect examples of a way to reduce stress and overwhelm because the more you can get out of your brain and the more you can get rid of the open loops, the needing to make sure you remember things, the trying to have that checklist in your head and have it down in a place. That is the perfect example of a way to reduce stress in your life and a way to systematize something. I mean, I think that's a perfect example. Very simple, perfect example.
Yes, and I do the same thing with packing lists. And if you've ever forgotten something on a trip, you know that that needs to go on the list so
Yes,
that you never
yes.
forget that again. There was the time we arrived on Maui, and I realized that I had forgotten to bring the house keys for the Maui house.
Oh,
And we it was almost midnight, and we were at Safeway, getting our milk and eggs. And thank goodness we had a property manager on Maui, and I was able to call her and say, "Can I get your key?" But it's on my list now.
yeah.
I'm not going to forget that again.
Either that or do a coded entry for yourself, right? A keyless lock.
Yes,
Yeah. Oh,
yes,
yeah. That's another way you can systematize, I suppose. So,
absolutely.
so if people want to find you, follow you, like I said, we'll have that link and some other links in the show notes, but go ahead and tell them where to go and any of the pertinent addresses and places to find you online so that they can continue to follow you and hear more about your what you're doing. And so do share.
Okay, thank you so much, Charis. Yes, my website is ralwest.com. So very simple. And if you want to just hone right in on the form to order my 6 secrets, it's ralwest.com/secrets. And I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram under Ral West Living the Dream or Ral West LTD. So it should be easy to find me.
Okay.
And I look forward to being able to interact with more people and share what I know and how to make their life easier and how they can live the dream as well.
I love that. Yes. Let's all be living the dream. I can say I am now myself. And it's so much fun, and to continue to see it unfold and just trust the journey, but be lit up by the way you're spending your time, and not only in professionally but in all ways, is so what I go for is satisfaction, contentment, fulfillment, even more than the thought that happiness is great, but I really love those concepts, those feelings, those that sense of being satisfied, content, and fulfilled, and peace of mind. Those are the things I go for. That's part of my experience of living the dream. And
That's wonderful.
yeah, it's a great place
Yes.
to
I
be.
mean, this is our only shot at this life. We need to make it the best it can possibly be.
Yeah, don't wait, everybody. And I
Yeah.
think, the people that we have listening here, they aren't, I don't think we have people listening that are truly waiting, but maybe you're a little bit not quite there. Maybe you're still wound up in some old, cultural programming about what you should and shouldn't be doing in your life, or, old
Mhm.
patterns and feeling stuck in certain ways. So, um, let us
Yeah,
continue to inspire you to break free from those.
and never think that you're too old
Right.
to start something new. That's hooey.
Yeah.
You're
Yes.
never too old. It's never too late.
Yeah. Yeah. Please, please don't get sucked in. I love Raoul's concept of youthing instead of aging, and it's let's reframe. Catch yourself when you start feeling and saying and thinking that you're getting old and there's some sort of limitations with things, because that
Yeah,
mindset is not going to be helpful for you. It's not going to empower you to do some of the things that we're talking about here. And so so catch yourself, eat those words, reframe, say it again, borrow her phrase, go for youthing. Let's go for youthing. Oh my gosh. Okay. So,
right.
you're closing, you have a quote that you want to share. So to wrap us up today.
Yes, there's so many quotes, but my favorite one is from Henry Ford, who said, "Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right."
Amen. Thank you,
So might
Ral.
as well might as well think you can.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here, sharing your phenomenal, exciting journey with us. It was lovely hearing more about you. And everyone, go stay in touch with Rao and have her help you to inspire you and help you, possibly even with the systems, to be living the dream. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much.